Use addition and subtraction equations to solve problems. This is lesson 2 in module 9. We are going to start right here, then we're going to go to here. So when we solve and write addition equations, we're going to use something called the subtraction property of equality. So we're going to subtract the same number from each side of the equation. And this is what you do in your head, and you don't even realize you do it in your head. Now, this is the basics of equations when you think of algebra. So yes, you do have to show me what you're doing because eventually it's going to get harder than this. And if you don't know how to show your work now, you're not going to know how to show your work later. Okay, so C plus 2 equals 5. We are trying to find what C is. So whatever number is on the same side as the letter, that's the one we're going to kick to the other side. The opposite of addition is subtracting. So if I have 2 minus 2, that leads us to 0. I have to do the same thing to the other side. So 5 minus 2 is 3. Let's check these out over here so you can see what I'm thinking. This one is written a little bit differently. It's the same thing as if you write it like this. Okay, this is an addition equation, so we're actually going to subtract. The 5 is next to by the variable side, so the opposite of adding 5 is subtracting 5. If I subtract 5 on this side, I have to do the same thing on this side. 6 minus 5 is 1. And that's what you have to do. Each of these will be worth 2 points. 1 for showing me what you're doing on either side, and 1 for the answer. On this one, the 3 is on the same side of the C. Instead of adding 3 to get rid of it, we have to subtract it. And we do the same thing on each side. 6 minus 3 is 3. Now, these are pretty basic problems, and you should probably, on a lot of them, already know what they are before you solve them. This next one, we're putting in decimals. The 3.5 is on the same side as the y, so the opposite of adding 3.5 is subtracting 3.5, and we have to do it to both sides. If you need to use your calculator, you are more than welcome to put this in your calculator to check to make sure you're doing it correctly. I got y equals 9.25. And our last one up here, the 2 is on the same side, so the opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. We have to do it to both sides. The reason we subtract 2 is because when we do that, this goes away. That's why I cross it out. It goes away. It's no longer there. It leaves the x by itself. 9 minus 2 is 7. Now, you can always easily go and check these to make sure you have them correct. X equals 7, so you just put the 7 right in here. 2 plus 7 is 9. We have it correct. Now, let's look at subtraction equations. When we use subtraction equations, we're going to use the addition property of equality. We're going to add the same number from each side of the equation. So it looks like this. The opposite of subtracting 5 is adding 5. When we do that, we are at 0. Whatever I do on this side, I do on this side. So if I added 5 on this side, I'm going to add 5 on this side. 9 plus 5 is 14. Let's take a look over here. Before I started, I know that my answer is going to be 9 because I know that 9 minus 1 is 8. Now let's see if we can get it. The opposite of subtracting 1 is adding 1. When I do that, these make 0. If I add 1 on the left-hand side, I have to even it out on this side. 8 plus 1 is 9. So C equals 9, and that's what we are going to get before we started. The opposite of subtracting 7 is adding 7. So I'm going to do that to both sides. So T equals 7 plus 2 is 9. This one, the opposite of subtracting 3 is adding 3. So I'm going to add 3. So G equals 4. Because 4 minus 3 is 1. Again, we can do decimals. If I wanted to, I could have put some fraction questions in here. The opposite of subtracting is adding, so we're going to add it. Remember, the number that we add is the number that's on the same side as the variable. Our answer is 7.9. You have to show what you're doing on each side, and you have to show me your answer. That's how you get your points. So you should be copying what I have. Check understanding. Jerry has, sorry, we're throwing in some more problems here. Jerry has two dogs. The older one weighs 95 pounds. Their combined weight is 120. Write and solve an equation to find the younger dog's weight, D. What number did you subtract from both sides? So, one dog weighs 95, and combined they weigh 120. So I need to add the weight of the other dog, which I don't know. They told me that was going to be D. Combined, it's 120. So I have 95 plus D equals 120. You could have written D plus 95 equals 120 also. It's an addition question. The opposite of adding is subtracting. So we're going to subtract 95 on each side. Sorry, I almost put an addition sign. Minus 95. So D equals 25 pounds. Because 120 minus 95 is 25. Now, what number did you subtract on both sides? That is 95. Okay, add or subtract to solve the equations. The opposite of subtracting 15 is adding 15. So I'm going to add 15 on both sides. 29 plus 15 is 44. I added 15. On this one, the opposite of adding is subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 20 or 12.26 from both sides. And when I do 39 minus 12.26, I get 26.74. I subtracted 12.26. And on this last one, I told you fractions were a possibility. The opposite of subtracting 3/4 is adding 3/4. 4 1/4 plus 3/4 is 5. And I added 3/4 to both sides. And that's your check understanding. Remember, if you need, sorry about that, if you need to go back and replay it, pause it, and review something, make sure you're doing that. Okay, what do you remember? Annie is 152.5 centimeters tall. She is 49 centimeters taller than her brother. Write and solve an equation to find her brother's height, B. So, total, I know it's 152.5. And she's taller than her brother. So, we have our brother's height, which is B, plus 49. So, I'm going to subtract 49 on each side. That zeroes out over there. We'll subtract 49. When I do that, I get an answer of 103.5 centimeters. So her brother is 103.5 centimeters tall. William buys a book for $14.85. He pays with a $20 bill. What will his change C be? So we need to figure out, are we adding or subtracting? So we have, the book is $14.85 plus the cost of the book equals this. We're trying to find our change. The opposite of adding is subtracting, so we're going to subtract this from both sides. And when we do that, we get $5.15 back. Let's look at the next ones. The opposite of adding 8 is subtracting 8. So we subtract 42 minus 8 is 34. The opposite of subtracting 81 is adding 81. So we added, and when I add 67 plus 81, I get 148. The opposite of adding 2.4 is subtracting 2.4. So we subtracted. 6.75 minus 2.4 is 4.35. Let's take a look over here. The opposite of subtracting 61 is adding 61. So I'm going to do that to each side. We added. And when I add 14 and 61 together, I get 75. We're going to throw in a decimal here again. The opposite of adding 3.89 is subtracting 3.89. So we subtracted 9.02 minus 3.89 is 5.13. And we're throwing in a fraction. The opposite of adding 5.9 is subtracting 5.9. Not 0.9, sorry. 5 over 9. So 5/9. We're subtracting 5/9. 8/9 minus 5/9 is 3/9. And if I simplify that, that will be 1/3. Okay, our last two. The opposite of adding 8.7 is subtracting 8.7. 12.05 minus 8.7 is 3.35. The opposite of subtracting 34 is adding 34 to both sides. 60 plus 34 is 94. Now, there's a lot of places that you can find how to do this with some extra help. YouTube has a lot of good ones. If you type in to find games to practice your games, you can do that. You can rewatch the video. It's up to you. If you need more help, find it. Ask me. Come in. Find it online. Ask a sibling.